one of the phases of urine formation, which is the selective reabsorption. Now, when you say selective reabsorption, from a dictionary word, reabsorbing something selectively, it means that you are not going to reabsorb everything, you are going to select some and absorb them. So selective reabsorption or tubular reabsorption is a process by which substances that are transported out of the glomerular filtrates through the epithelium of the renal tubule and into the blood of the peritubular capillaries. Now, we all know that during urine formation, we started with filtration, and in filtration, blood or the blood that are able to be sieved or that are able to be filtered into the bone marrow capsule is called the glomerular filtrates. And the glomerular filtrates that are carried by the proximal convoluted tubule, they are carried by the proximal convoluted tubule, and in the course of their movement, some of the substances in the filtrate will be reabsorbed into the system. And those that cannot be reabsorbed will be what? Sent to the collecting that for what? Excretion. Now, for selective reabsorption to occur, when you say selective reabsorption, it's a selective process. And it is the selective process that conserves the needed materials. In the filtrate, there are some materials that are needed. So the process will conserve some of the needed materials, whilst it will allow the excess and the waste materials to be what? Excreted in the urine. So in sum, you know that the selective reabsorption is a process in which the composition and the volume of the glomerular filtrates are altered during their passage through the renal tubule. As they are picked here and they are moving through the proximal convoluted tubule, and as they descend down, as they move, the component of the glomerular filtrate will be altered, because during the course of the movement, some of the substances in the filtrate will be what? Reabsorbed. And those that cannot be reabsorbed, or those that are toxic, will be left to go into the collecting duct for excretion to what? Okay. So the process by which the components and the volume of the glomerular filtrates are what? Altered during their passage through the renal tubule. One of the purpose of, or one of the reasons why selective reabsorption occurs is to reabsorb into the blood those constituents or those components of the filtrates that are needed by the body to maintain fluid and electrolyte balance, as well as pH of the blood. But remember, before reabsorption can occur, reabsorption occurs either both active or passive means. We have active transport mechanism, then passive transport mechanism. Now, when you say active transport mechanism, what does it mean? For active transport mechanism, it needs chemical energy. The active transport mechanism needs what? Chemical energy, such as the ATP, to transport those substances against their concentration gradients. Now, assuming the glomerular filtrate is traveling from the proximal convoluted tubule, we need active transport mechanism. And when you say active transport mechanism, we're talking about chemical energy, ATP, that will move the substances like this, as it descends down, and you know, as it moves up, it should be able to beat against concentration gradients. You need that force, that energy, to push those substances to move through other tubule, and that is the active transport mechanism. Now, what happened? During the transportation, we have nutrients such as glucose, amino acid, organic acid, lactic acid, ascorbic acid. They are actively reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule. So these substances I've mentioned, the moment the glomerular filtrate is moved from the Bowman capsule and it reaches the proximal convoluted tube. The ascorbic acid, the lactic acid, the glucose, the amino acid of the glomerular filtrate, they are reabsorbed into the proximal convoluted tube. Now, we are not yet done. Aside the glucose, the lactic acid, the amino acid, the organic acid that are absorbed in the proximal convoluted tube, there are also chloride ions, sodium, calcium, potassium, and phosphates that are also absorbed in the ascending limb of the loop of what? Ending. So the components I've mentioned, this is the descending limb. This is the ascending limb. Now, as the amino acid, lactic acid, organic acid are absorbed in the proximal convoluted tube, and the remaining moves as it reaches the ascending limb of the loop of Henle. The chloride, the sodium, the calcium, the potassium, and the phosphates are also reabsorbed in the ascending limb of the loop of what? Henle. So we are reabsorbing continuously. Now, that is the active transport. Now, what about passive transport? Now, for the passive transport, the mechanism of passive transport include the electrochemical attraction, it includes diffusion, it includes osmosis. These are examples of passive transport. Electrochemical attraction, diffusion, and osmosis. But remember that for passive transport to be effective, it is determined by the permeability of the tubal segments to the substance. As the substances they move, the tubal, being its proximal convoluted tubal, loop of Henle, or the distal convoluted, they should be what? Permeable. Again, the amount of water that is reabsorbed is also a factor. The amount of water that is reabsorbed. So when you talk about selective reabsorption, it can be enhanced by active transport and what? Passive transport. And under the passive transport, there should be permeability of the tubular segment. At the same time, there should be some amount of water that is what? Reabsorbed. Now we'll continue with the forms of passive transport, the electrochemical attraction, the osmosis, and the diffusion tomorrow. Thank you very much.